Discover how one delivery girl amazingly exposed 9 programmers, transforming laughter into inspiration. Sarah struggled against the wind as she maneuvered her bicycle through the cluttered streets of the bustling suburban neighborhood, each pedal pushing her closer to the next delivery. At 26, the daily grind played on her mind like an old record. She imagined that every package she carried held not just the weight of the items, but her family's dreams of financial stability after her parents' job losses. Yet today, her resolve felt heavy. Today, doubt lurked in the corners of her mind. As she targeted a tech startup in the heart of the neighborhood, a trendy building with shining glass number plates, Sarah pulled up outside, her breath visible in the chill of the afternoon air. It shouldn't have bothered her so much when the programmers snickered at her from across the street, but their laughter, bitter, arrogant, punctured her sense of dignity. What's a delivery girl like her doing here? Shouldn't she be in school? One sneered. Pain mingled with anger deep in her gut. She felt small, belittled. Deep down, she had always feared this moment. This cruel reminder of her lack of a college degree hung over her like a black cloud. That evening, the anger swirled within her like a storm. Instead of returning home to rest, she opened her laptop determined to learn coding. Each keystroke was a battle cry for respect she hadn't found since the day her parents lost their jobs. But as hours passed and lines of code blurred together, frustration simmered underneath determination. Did she truly have what it took? Would late-night study sessions even matter when faced with the polished skills of those laughing at her? Before she could spiral too deep into self-doubt, a chilling discovery landed like a brick in her stomach. On a coding forum, she stumbled across confidential internal discussions from that very tech startup, an array of ethical dilemmas and glaring flaws within their project. She was mind-blown. This knowledge was her ticket, but it filled her with fear. What could she do with this information? Exposing them could damage others whom she had no quarrel with, yet remaining silent felt equally wrong. Torn between the desire to prove herself and the fear of retribution, her heart raced as the implications swirled. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension ratcheted up, and every plan Sarah devised felt laden with conflicting emotions. Could she expose the programmers without harming innocent parts of the community still recovering from the economic downturn? As she practiced her speech in front of the mirror, she felt the weight of her family's expectations pressing down harder than any physical burden. Hope twinkled faintly in the distance, overshadowed by a growing fear of the unseen consequences of her intentions. At the apex of this internal crisis, she uncovered her family's hidden legacy, a collection of technological insights they had safeguarded for generations. The thought of drawing on that history kindled a flame of resilience inside her. But just as she felt a spark of clarity amidst the chaos, a text arrived, sending chills through her entire frame, a warning that someone close to her was in danger. The ground beneath her feet seemed to shift as she braced herself for what was to come, her heart pounding with a whirlwind of uncertainty as she prepared for an irreversible confrontation. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows in her small apartment, Sarah's mind raced. The warning text echoed ominously, a cryptic message that dropped like a stone in her stomach. It could have been nothing more than a prank, but dread knotted her insides. As she looked at her phone, the screen blazed like a beacon. Her brother David was out late at a party, and she couldn't shake the feeling something terrible could happen. Drawing on her newfound technical insight, she began scanning the messages for context, seeking clues in the anxious exchanges between her brother and his friends. Each ping irritated her, an uninvited reminder of her current predicament. Should she concentrate on protecting him or focus on her own potential exposure of the startup? Torn between family loyalty and her chance to redeem herself in the tech world, She felt the first threads of paralysis seeping into her resolve. Yet, just beneath the surface of her fear lay the embers of determination. She was tired of secondary roles, of being the girl who delivered packages while others thrived from her overlaps. The programmers may have overlooked her dreams, but this was her moment to seize the narrative. If she could turn their laughter into a lesson, perhaps she was never meant to be a spectator, but rather the protagonist of her own story. With each line she typed, her confidence ignited. The vulnerability she felt while navigating their forums had morphed into a weapon, her mind weaving strategies like a complex coding algorithm. Utilizing the family legacy, Sarah gathered resources, reaching out to her parents' contacts in the tech field. They'd always hinted at their connections, but fear had held her back. Now it felt like divine serendipity, an avenue opening just when she needed orientation most. As she sought insight and allies, she fortified her courage. The situation wasn't only about her. This was a critical opportunity to challenge the ethical lapses of the programmers directly affecting her community. But informants needed to be secured first. She needed allies before unveiling revelations that could send shockwaves through the startup. The weight of responsibility surged into her veins as she realized her voice could disrupt cycles of apathy and entitlement. Around midnight, Sarah sat across from her laptop once more, a small plate of leftovers forgotten beside her. She meticulously crafted a series of messages to trusted contacts, many of whom had faced their own struggles in the field, and deeply understood the tension between ambition and ethics. Would they join her burgeoning crusade? Suddenly a ping broke her concentration again. A reply from David's friend. "We're heading to the roof, come find us. It's lit up here." An undeniable urge to intervene surged within her. Images of him laughing with his friends melded with the foreboding tone of the warning that had shadowed her night. Her protective instinct intensified. With a mixture of trepidation and fierce determination, she slung her jacket over her shoulders. The door swung open. Perhaps confronting the dangers lurking in her brother's circle was just as crucial as the battle brewing against the programmers. "Where are you going?" A thought nagged her, a voice chiming the urgency of the hour. As the door clicked shut behind her, each echoing step assigned a gravity to her actions. She was marching toward her destiny. Little did she know that in attempting to safeguard her brother, she would stumble upon hidden truths that intertwined their lives even more dangerously with the tech startup than before. The chilled air stung her face, igniting her senses. Each pedal on her bike carried not just her fraught emotions, but a relentless pursuit, a determination to overcome, reveal, and perhaps redefine her story. But standing before whatever awaited her, the faint ringing of her phone cut through the night's stillness. Another text. It could change everything. As she read the message, uncertainty gripped her heart while she wondered, was this the information she needed to proceed, or a new threat to her awakening journey? The flickering streetlights cast ghostly shadows as Sarah perched on her bike, her heart pounding with anticipation. The phone trembled in her grip, demanding her attention. With a tentative breath, she opened the message. It was from an anonymous number, and the contents sent a chill racing down her spine. "They're planning to do something big tonight. You need to stop them before it's too late." Her instincts surged, a cocktail of fear and determination propelling her forward. What did this mean? Who were they? She thought of David, out there with friends, perhaps oblivious to dangers lurking within his carefree night. A blend of dread and resolve surged, tethering her to the mission ahead. She needed clarity. No more guessing. The words echoed in her mind, colliding with her desire to break free from being just an observer. This could be a turning point, an opening to hold her own, and alter the trajectory of not only her life, but potentially those around her. She cycled faster, the wind biting her cheeks, forcing her to focus. The specter of the startup loomed larger than ever. The programmers would pay for their unchallenged behavior. If their actions endangered her brother, their recklessness had gone too far. Arriving at the party's venue, a once bustling rooftop adorned with strands of dim lights, she felt her pulse quicken. The laughter from within merged with the distant sounds of the city, both inviting and threatening. Her mind raced as she confronted a new reality. She was not only David's sister but now a potential disruptor in a web of corporate misconduct. Just as Sarah locked her bike, she spotted David. He and his friends were gathered in a circle, drinks in hand, the exuberance in their laughter contrasting starkly with the urgency in her chest. Yet just behind the jovial facade, she sensed tension brewing. Could it be tied to the cryptic warnings and her suspicions? She stepped closer, the sound of her heartbeat nearly drowning out their chatter. "David," she called out, suppressing the volume of her voice amid the din of the party. David turned, surprise flickering in his eyes. "You have to listen to me. We need to talk." His friend's laughter quieted as David's expression shifted from confusion to concern. Sarah pulled him aside, the two of them moving to the edge of the rooftop, where the view glimmered but shadows lurked. "There's something going down tonight. I just got a message that something bad is happening. I don't know what, but we need to leave," Sarah insisted, her tone grave. David blinked, hesitating as the laughter curled into the night air without them. "Seriously? You're overreacting. It's just a party." "It's just a party? You don't understand. I'm serious, David. These people, the programmers, they're more dangerous than you can imagine. I've seen what they're capable of." She cut him off, urgency melting into frustration. "Are you talking about my friends?" David shot back. "They're not involved in anything illegal, Sarah. No, not your friends. I'm talking about the people they work for, the ones using your generation's hunger for success and exposure. They can ruin lives. Your life," she pressed, her voice a whisper yet charged with intensity. The wind whipped around them, echoing her urgency. She searched his eyes, that familiar bond between them flickering. As David's brow furrowed, a spark of realization ignited within her. This wasn't just about the programmers. It was a question of trust. She needed to convince David of the risks he faced. But what if this conversation spun out of control, fracturing their relationship instead? Just as doubt began to creep in, her phone buzzed again, pulling her from her thoughts. This time the message read, "They are here, act fast." A knot twisted in her stomach, then sharpened into clarity. She needed to act, not just for David, but for herself too. Suddenly David stepped back, the weight of her words settling on him, a shift in his demeanor. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice shifting from skepticism to cooperation. The transformation in his engagement fed her courage, revealing an unexpected ally. The moment she hoped for was unfolding. It was no longer just her fight. They stood on the precipice of action, ready to face whatever came next. "No matter what happens, we need to confront them together," Sarah declared, steeling her resolve. As she grasped David's hand, adrenaline surged through her veins. No longer alone in this battle, a new purpose materialized. But before they could move, the crowd's energy shifted. An imposing figure loomed from the shadows, eyes glinting with authority that sent a chill through Sarah. "You two shouldn't be here," he cautioned, his tone lined with menace. In that moment, Sarah understood. The battle for her future had just begun, and she was much closer to the eye of the storm than she had ever imagined. What was the true cost of exposing the truth? The weight of that question bore heavy upon her as the confrontation loomed. Fear coursed through Sarah as she faced the imposing figure. The weight of his presence threatened to smother the spark of courage she had ignited within herself and David. Who was he? What authority did he hold? "Let me put it this way," he continued, his voice low and deliberate. "If you know what's good for you, you'll turn around and forget what you've seen. This isn't a place for you." As thoughts swirled in Sarah's mind, she caught David's gaze. He looked frightened yet resolute, an impression that struck a chord in her. Trusting that he would stand with her felt both exhilarating and terrifying. The figure stepped closer, and Sarah instinctively positioned herself protectively in front of David. "What are you planning?" she demanded, urgency coursing through her voice. She realized in that moment that this was her chance to reclaim not only her brother's safety, but her own agency. The man smirked, a chilling turn of his lips. "You really shouldn't meddle in affairs that don't concern you, but if you insist on being here..." He reached into his jacket, producing a sleek tablet, and flicked a finger across its surface. The screen erupted with data, graphs, images, code snippets. What is that? Sarah asked, the sheer volume of its contents dazing her. Just a little demonstration, a preview of what we can achieve. His eyes glinted with satisfaction, but there was an underlying sinister edge. You see, knowledge is power, and power is what we need to thrive. Your brother and his friends are riding a wave of innovation. They should be thanking us, not worrying about being endangered. Sarah felt her stomach twist at the implications. They weren't just programmers, they were creators of their own reality, playing with forces beyond their comprehension. Her mind raced with conflicting emotions, dread of what might unfold, and a burgeoning belief that she might actually have leverage in this situation. David, we can't let this go, she insisted, her voice quivering but firm. We need to show what they're truly capable of, not just for us, but for everyone who could suffer from their recklessness. The man interjected smoothly, his tone mocking. You think exposing this will solve anything? You're out of your depth, little girl. Fueled by his dismissal, Sarah felt adrenaline spike. It crystallized her resolve. Inside her, a voice whispered, no, screamed, that this was her moment. Maybe it's time you learned that power comes with consequences. David shifted beside Sarah, his expression transitioning from alarm to intrigue. What are you suggesting? We need to gather proof, David. This isn't just about us. A lot of people could get hurt. As the words spilled from her lips, she recognized their potency. In this moment, she was no longer a mere bystander. She was an agent of change. The figure took a step back, concern flickering across his features. The defiance in Sarah's stance seemed to rattle him, if only for a moment. You're playing a dangerous game. Then I guess I'll just have to play it better, she shot back with resolve. The confidence building inside felt unnatural, but electric. You have no idea who you're dealing with, he warned, the edge of his intimidation softening. Neither do you, Sarah retorted, feeling emboldened. With that, she squeezed David's hand tighter, their bond bolstering her courage. The man hesitated, and Sarah seized the moment. Let's find the others and expose them, whatever it takes. There was no turning back now. Could they really dismantle an entity they barely understood? The stakes had skyrocketed just as her sense of purpose had crystallized. With her heart hammering, she pushed down a wave of anxiety. This was her chance, not just to protect David, but to assert her own strength, and the confrontation was just the beginning. As the man pivoted and melted back into the shadows, Sarah felt a clawing urgency. A clock was ticking, and the moment would come where faith in herself would be tested as never before. The path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but as she looked into David's eyes, she knew they had ignited something beyond fear. They had sparked a revolution within themselves. Let's go, she whispered to him, setting her gaze upon the exit. Outside, the real work awaited them. What plan could save not just their futures, but shine a light on the darkness that had enveloped so many? The tension of that question spun the air around them as they took their first steps towards confrontation, knowing the real fight was about to begin. As Sarah and David exited the building, the cool night air hit their faces like a splash of cold water, snapping them back to reality. The adrenaline still coursing through her veins made her heart race, but an underlying current of fear threatened to pull her back under. The dangers of what they were about to confront loomed steadily in the background, a dark cloud that wouldn't dissipate. Do you really think we can do this? David asked, his voice barely above a whisper, urgency flickering in his eyes. This was not just about confrontation. It required them to tread carefully on an uncharted path filled with unknown risks. We have to. What if we don't? We could be complicit in something terrible, Sarah replied firmly. She felt an insatiable need to act, even if it meant risking everything. Her determination mirrored the fire in David's eyes, and they both understood the weight of their mission, to expose not just the danger, but also the truth behind the facade of innovation that masked exploitation. They trudged through the deserted streets, the street lamps casting long shadows as they navigated toward the co-working space where David and his friends had been working. The sheer enormity of their task settled heavily in Sarah's mind. Gathering proof wouldn't just involve collecting data. It required strategy, careful planning, and above all, courage. Who were they, mere outsiders, to challenge something so vast? In the quiet outside the space, she hesitated for a moment, doubt gnawing at her. What if she wasn't strong enough? What if her perception of power based on knowledge was flawed? David squeezed her hand, and the warmth of his support ignited a spark within her. "We can't back down now," he urged, drawing her focus back to the task at hand. "We just need a plan." "Yeah, a plan," Sarah echoed, feeling slightly overwhelmed. They needed something more than just determination, something actionable. Her mind began piecing together a strategy, one that would draw upon her skills, her experiences, and the strengths of those around them. "We gather our resources first," she said, her voice steadier now, a blueprint forming. "Then we infiltrate. We start by getting access to their computers, records, anything that can show the extent of what they're doing. They won't suspect us, not with how they perceive the others. All they see is a group of inexperienced kids." David nodded, the hesitation in his expression giving way to newfound resolve. "And once we have that information, then we release it," Sarah said, her voice stronger than she felt. "We need to reach out to those who can help, reporters, activists, anyone willing to take our findings to a larger audience. If we can show what's really happening, maybe we can stop it." As they moved closer to the entrance, Sarah felt a creeping sense of purpose settling within her like armor. This was her moment for growth, a chance not only for personal redemption, but also to assert her own voice in a world that often rendered her invisible. They entered, and an array of familiar faces filled the room. Excitement buzzed in the air as her brother's friends gathered around, each caught up in a whirlwind of energy focused on their latest projects. "Sarah, David, you guys are back," one of them exclaimed. But noticing the urgency in their expressions, he quickly shifted to concern. "What's wrong?" "We need to talk, and it's serious," Sarah said, regaining a measure of control over her spinning thoughts. As she scanned the group, determination washed over her, reinforcing her resolve to share not only the immediate danger, but her vision for a collaborative resistance. "It's about what we've been working on. We're in trouble." She saw the shift in their reactions, curiosity mixed with apprehension. Her heart pounded against her chest, but she felt electrified by the urgency to inspire them. "We're going to need everyone's help," she declared, realizing this was more than her fight. As she laid out her plan, her voice carried a newfound authority. Sarah wasn't just a delivery girl anymore, she was a collaborator, a leader forging a path through the murky shadows of fear and uncertainty. What could happen if they united their skills against a common threat? As the room filled with the sounds of planning and strategizing, Sarah caught David's gaze, both of them buzzing with the electricity of purpose. But lurking beneath that thrill remained a relentless uncertainty about the depth of the forces they were about to confront. Would they be able to stand against them, or would their courage falter before the real enemy? As Sarah's heart raced, she was struck by an unforeseen realization. Her transformation was not merely for survival, but for something greater. The tension mounted. Darkness lurked just beyond the threshold of their newfound alliance. Would their aspiration to expose the truth become the spark that lit a fire against the encroaching shadows? Or would it consume them whole? Sarah's mind raced with excitement and anxiety as she took center stage among David's friends, her voice weaving through plans and strategies. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on her, but so did the flicker of empowerment ignited by her burgeoning role as a leader. Ideas and fears collided within her, forming a chaotic mix that pushed her forward. She was no longer on the periphery, she was in the thick of it. "Let's break into teams," she proposed, her voice rising above the ambient chatter. "We need specific tasks assigned so we can maximize our strengths." For the first time, she could see the potential in every pair of eyes around her, each a reservoir of skill and perspective, all of which could be vital to their cause. As discussion sparked around the room, Sarah felt her confidence swell. She had always been the one observing, quietly admiring those who took the lead. Yet here she was. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. What if she let them down? What if her inexperience cost them dearly? The doubts crept in, but she pushed back, focused on the task ahead. Emily, you're good with design and tech. Can you lead a team that maps out their organizational structure? We need to know who calls the shots, Sarah instructed, locking eyes with one of David's friends. Absolutely. I can get started on that right away, Emily replied, her enthusiasm infectious. Great. And Ryan, you have experience in cybersecurity, right? Can you help us figure out how to gain access without raising alarms? Sarah turned to him, searching for both his expertise and his trust. Count me in. He nodded, his demeanor one of unwavering commitment. With each task delegated, Sarah felt the sense of imposter syndrome dissipate. It wasn't just about bravery. It was about recognizing the capabilities of herself and her peers. They were all engines of change in their own right. The more she spoke, the more she saw reflections of that fire she felt mirrored in others. It was refreshing to witness such determination. However, as they mapped out their approach, unease seeped back. What if they were being watched? What if their actions prompted a preemptive strike from those they aimed to expose? The risks were real and tangible, like shadows waiting silently to pounce. Okay, everyone, let's come back here in 2 days with what we've gathered so we can regroup and make sure we're on the right track, Sarah proposed, adopting a tone meant to fortify their resolve. As the group began to disband, she felt an undercurrent of motivation coursing through her veins. While her peers collected supplies or went home to gear up for their respective tasks, Sarah lingered, watching David interacting with their friends. His laughter contrasted sharply with her anxious, pensive state. What are you thinking? David asked, sidling up to her, his expression a mix of concern and support. It's a lot, isn't it? What if we can't pull it off? She admitted, her voice quieter now. She was a storm of worry, her moments of triumph overshadowed by the weight of the expectations she'd placed upon herself. Then we adapt. We're figuring this out together. You've already helped them see the importance of this, he reminded her gently. His reassurance enveloped her with a warmth that melted the chill of uncertainty. I guess it feels like more than just a project. It's personal, she confessed. Words began tumbling out as her heart opened. I don't want to let anyone down. I want to show them that we can stand against this. But how can I do that? David paused, his eyes reflecting a deep understanding. You're asking the right questions. That's more than a lot can say. Just remember, it's your vision that's guiding us. His words ignited a determination buried beneath her doubts. Maybe this experience was less about knowing all the answers, and more about embracing the unknown together, building each other up as they faced shadows that might very well overwhelm their cause. As Sarah took a deep breath, she noticed the first signs of dawn creeping through the windows, casting pale light into the space they had claimed as their own. In that moment, she felt renewed purpose, to protect her newfound allies and unearth the truth. But as she turned to leave, a chilling thought wrapped itself around her heart. What if their actions ultimately drew the dangerous interest of those already high up in the system? The question lingered like a phantom that refused to leave her mind. Would she be able to protect them all while diving deeper into an abyss of deception? The stakes had just risen, and she would have to gather every ounce of her persistently evolving strength to confront whatever arose next. Sarah arrived home with the weight of expectation still hovering above her. The shadows of recent discussions echoed in her mind, each thought entwined with the anxiety that threatened to consume her. She needed clarity. Turning on her computer, she opened a document and began typing. The words poured out of her like a flood, a blend of strategies, fears, and nascent ideas. A small part of her, the part that doubted, was still whispering that she wasn't cut out for this. Yet, as she filled the screen with plans, rhythms emerged. Ideas began to coalesce around methods to gather information and identify weak points in the organization they were targeting. Amidst the notes, Sarah stumbled upon a realization. The more she wrote, the more she discovered hidden perspectives about their adversaries. The complexity of the system began to reveal itself not just as a monolith of power, but as a structure rife with vulnerable components. She paused, thinking of Ryan's expertise in cybersecurity. Perhaps his knowledge could connect with her growing understanding of the organizational vulnerabilities. It struck her that they weren't entirely in the dark. The more they uncovered, the more they could act strategically. Each member of their group was part of a puzzle, and she was beginning to see how they fit together. This sense of unity was a newfound strength she hadn't anticipated. However, a tidal wave of uncertainty crashed over her as she thought of the risks involved. Each bit of information they sought could expose them to scrutiny. What if they miscalculated and set off alarms within the very system they aimed to dismantle? With a wry smile, she recalled how easily intimidated she had been only weeks ago. Now here she was, compelled to embrace discomfort, facing the labyrinth of confrontation that lay ahead. Sarah planted herself in front of the flickering screen and began sketching diagrams of the organizational structure Emily would develop. Visualization made the daunting complexity easier to dissect, transforming abstract fears into tangible elements they could manipulate. As the hours ticked by, an odd sense of exhilaration accompanied her growing understanding. She was exhausting her body, but invigorating her mind. This was a pivotal moment for her. It was no longer just about tackling a challenge. It was about her evolution from an admirer of leaders to one herself. Her tenacity created ripples of change, but so did her vulnerability. What if uncovering the truth ultimately implicated them in a more dramatic public fallout than she had envisioned? Sleep teased at the edges of her consciousness, but determination kept her awake. She needed to present her ideas confidently to the group. In the stillness, a new seed of doubt had begun to take root. What if they uncovered something that had far-reaching consequences? What if a deeper conspiracy existed, one that connected to their lives, opening wounds they had yet to recognize? As dawn broke outside, illuminating her room with a gentle light, Sarah contemplated the intertwining threads of her own narrative, a budding leader, commingling courage and trepidation. She understood now more than ever that each decision would shape their path forward. They were not just uncovering a system, they were also reconstructing their identities in the process. With a newfound resolve, she committed to preparing not only for strategic discussions, but also for possible confrontations. Meeting their adversaries face to face was an inevitability lurking just beyond the horizon of their efforts. It was time to be more than just reactive. She needed to be proactive. As she readied herself for the day ahead, the thought crept back in, darker than before. What if they were already too late? Sarah clutched the edges of the desk, barely breathing as her mind raced ahead. This could be the beginning of something significant, or it could unravel everything they'd worked for. She would have to confront the looming specter of danger that taunted her with the possibility of failure. From this point forward, every move would count. The deeper she delved into the web they were attempting to unravel, the more she felt the chilling prospect of confrontation on the horizon. It was one thing to act with purpose. It was another to confront the monsters lying just beneath the surface. Would they be able to navigate the storm brewing within the depths of their investigation, before it caught up to them? As the first rays of sunlight spilled into her room, Sarah inhaled deeply, grounding herself in the reality of what lay ahead. Today marked a turning point. Not just for their mission, but for her own burgeoning confidence as a leader. With the plans she'd crafted overnight, she felt armed with knowledge. Yet each possibility weighed heavily. The very act of awakening a giant could harbor unforgiving consequences. She met up with Emily at their favorite cafe later that morning, a familiar haven from the chaos brewing in her life. Flipping through her notes, Sarah sought to articulate her vision for the group. The smell of fresh coffee mingled with the crisp autumn air filled her senses. It should have calmed her, but instead it heightened her alertness. Each sip was a reminder of the commitment she'd made, to herself and to her team. "Okay, I've been thinking," Sarah began, her voice steady despite the flutter of anxiety racing through her. Emily's eyes flicked toward her, mirroring Sarah's intensity. "We need to focus on the vulnerabilities. If we can identify the weak points in their system, We can disrupt their operations strategically. Emily furrowed her brow, her supportive demeanor giving way to skepticism. But what if they see us coming? What if we become targets ourselves? It feels like we're inviting trouble. A sliver of doubt crept into Sarah's resolve. She felt the ground shift beneath her. Emily's concern mirrored her internal fears. Taking a moment to breathe deeply, Sarah chose to acknowledge the rising tide of uncertainty, instead of banishing it. I get that it's risky, she admitted, but it's also necessary. If we don't act, they'll continue their exploitation unchecked. The conversation morphed into a spirited debate, where every challenge Emily posed forced Sarah to examine the depths of her own conviction. Each argument honed her understanding of their mission's stakes, compelling her to reflect on her growing capacity to lead. Yet somewhere deep within, the thought nagged at her. Was she trying to be something she wasn't? At last, they settled on a plan. Dissect the organization's structure, leveraging Ryan's cybersecurity knowledge and employing surveillance techniques to gather information without drawing attention. As they brainstormed, patterns began crystallizing. Sarah recognized her role as a strategist, not just a participant. That afternoon, she met Ryan in a dimly lit corner of the cafe, where the noise of the bustling city momentarily faded away. He was a whirlwind of energy, oscillating between enthusiasm and unease, as Sarah shared their discoveries. Yet amidst his cheerful demeanor, Sarah caught a glimmer of hesitation. Ryan, she probed, are you in? I mean, really in? We need you with us on this. He paused, his fingers fidgeting over his laptop keyboard. It's not just the skills I bring, there's danger here. You know that, right? His words cut through her excitement, revealing layers of vulnerability that she hadn't appreciated before. Do you think I don't understand the risks? Sarah's voice sharpened, but the edge of anger quickly dulled into something more reflective. I would rather confront them than remain passive. She pondered their precarious position. Every choice they made bore consequences, not just for themselves, but for those around them. This internal strife was growing into a moral dilemma, gnawing at her conscience. Was ignorance indeed bliss, or was she duty-bound to enlighten others? Perhaps this confrontation was not exclusively outside. It was also within. Each questioning glance exchanged with Ryan peeled back layers of what she thought she knew about leadership, resilience, and her own motivations. Later that night, staring at the screen where plans sat ready for revise and review, she realized she hadn't just been preparing for battle against an adversary, but for a confrontation with her own self-doubt. As she closed her laptop, a rush of clarity surged through her veins. The journey wasn't simply about battling external forces, but excavating her true self. But uncertainty hung overhead like a thick fog. As Sarah lay down to sleep, she found herself grappling with one lingering question. How far was she willing to go to uncover the truth, and who would pay the price alongside her? Already restless, she felt the tension mounting, pressing her to define her next move. This was no longer just about strategy. It was about a personal reckoning. Tomorrow, she would have to confront not just the organization, but herself. The morning greeted Sarah with a crisp chill that seeped through her jacket as she stepped outside, her breath visible in the air. A habitual optimism battled against her lingering self-doubt. The past days had shifted her understanding of leadership, transforming it from a static role into a dynamic journey filled with ethical complexities and personal trials. As she walked toward her office, a knot of anxiety twisted in her stomach. Each step felt like a leap into uncharted territory. Today, she was no longer just a participant in the unfolding plot. She was stepping into the role of the protagonist with everything at stake. Thoughts of Emily and Ryan's concerns danced through her mind, each misgiving magnifying the weight of her purpose. It wasn't just about strategy anymore. It was about creating a vision that others could believe in. She could almost hear Emily's voice cautioning her. What if you're leading them into a trap? But was she? Arriving at her desk, Sarah flipped open her laptop to reveal the well-structured plans that had consumed her thoughts. The outline of their intended actions seemed solid, yet questions loomed over her like a dark cloud. What if their research unraveled something far more dangerous than she had calculated? Inherently, she had always been a problem solver, yet here she was, not just solving problems, but provoking them. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from the spiral of doubts. It was an alert from Ryan about a potential weakness in the system they were investigating. An adrenaline rush surged through her as she scanned his message, interpreting the complexities of cybersecurity with renewed vigor. Every second counted, and suddenly the pieces of the puzzle began fitting together. This was what she thrived on: the chase, the thrill of discovery. But as Sarah meticulously crafted her response, another nagging thought emerged. Was she capable of leading her team not just into victory, but through potential peril? The drive to empower others fueled her, but the doubt still lapped at the edges of her resolve. Could she navigate them through the intricacies of fear, self-preservation, and moral obligation, or would she risk losing their faith in her? Meeting up later with Ryan, she noticed a discernible shift in his demeanor. The usual buoyancy was replaced by a stark concentration. "We need to discuss the risks," he said as he leaned over the table, his tone serious. "If we push too hard, too fast, we might attract their attention. And I'm not sure we're prepared for a confrontation if it comes to that." His words hung heavily in the air, forcing Sarah to confront a reality she had tried to sidestep. "I get it. But what's our alternative? Sit and wait for them to finish their plans?" As she spoke, she realized her tone was sharper than intended. The last thing she wanted was to alienate Ryan, who had become an invaluable ally. "Let's just make sure we have all our bases covered. I trust you, Sarah, but I also worry what exposing ourselves might mean for the people we care about," he countered, a flicker of desperation evident in his eyes. A flicker of betrayal pierced through Sarah. Care about? She had been trying to protect them by confronting these threats head-on. But as she absorbed his perspective, she felt the walls of her own moral certainty begin to crack. What exactly was the cost of their mission? What sacrifices would they have to endure? Returning home that night, Sarah's mind brewed with conflicting emotions. She set her cluttered room aglow with the light from her laptop, but found clarity elusive. In seeking to awaken the giant, had she unknowingly invited its wrath into their lives? Just then, an idea sparked. What if she devised a way to safeguard those around her while still pursuing her agenda? But could she thread an intricate line between action and caution, bravery and folly? With determination igniting her resolve, she began to outline a new plan, one that balanced the offensive push with defensive measures. If they were going to challenge an oppressive system, they needed to do it on their terms. As Sarah drifted toward sleep, weighed down by the echoes of her internal tumult, one critical thought eclipsed her mind. How could she turn her fears into her greatest asset? Tomorrow would not just be another day. It would demand a new strategy altogether, and it would require courage like never before. The moment of truth was fraught with tension. Would she rise to the challenge, or would she be swallowed by the very uncertainties she sought to confront? Either way, the stakes had never been higher. With the sun painting the sky in hues of amber and rose, Sarah stood in front of her mirror, the early morning light casting a soft glow on her determined face. Today was the day. The weight of her journey pressed on her shoulders, but now it felt like armor. The doubts that used to cripple her began to settle into resolve. She was ready to face the challenges as the proactive leader she had become. In the co-working space, a palpable energy filled the room as David, Emily, and Ryan joined her, each one contributing a piece of the puzzle they had worked tirelessly to assemble. The camaraderie forged through confrontation and fear morphed into something powerful. "All right, everyone," Sarah began, her voice steady and clear. "We know what we're up against. Today we are not just here to gather information. We're here to take a stand against the unethical practices we've discovered." She could see the spark in their eyes. These were not just kids in a cafe. They were allies ready to challenge a corporation that threatened their community. Everyone nodded, their resolve strengthening, but Sarah's mind wandered for just a moment. She thought back to the girl who once hid behind her delivery box, constantly underestimated and overlooked. That Sarah might have hesitated, but this Sarah felt the fire of transformation burning brightly inside her. She introduced the action plan, outlining each task with clarity. Emily would collate their findings and distill them into a presentation for their engagement with potential partners who could amplify their cause. Ryan would breach the company's network one last time, ensuring they had solid proof of the startup's wrongdoings while employing protective measures so they wouldn't draw attention. David would focus on rallying support within their community. After all, they would need more than just proof. They needed allies. Each step she outlined came to life, invigorating the group. They were not just a collection of individuals. They were a unit, each member critical to the greater mission. Sarah felt it. Her leadership was being validated through the actions they were taking, and she embraced that validation. As they broke off to begin their tasks, Sarah felt a rush of gratitude for her team. This wasn't her fight alone anymore. It was shared. She headed to her station, determined to coalesce the fragments of her ideas and strategies into something tangible. Hours passed as they worked relentlessly, driven by purpose. The room pulsed with creativity and determination. Just as Sarah began to feel the needs threading together into a coherent narrative, Ryan burst into the room, breathing heavily. "I've found something," he exclaimed, waving a printout above his head. Excitement surged through everyone as they gathered around him. Ryan's voice trembled with adrenaline. "There's an upcoming launch event where they're going to showcase their new technology. If we infiltrate and gather evidence there, it could be the definitive moment we need to expose them." Sarah's heart raced. It was a high-stakes plan, but if they were successful, they could gain enough leverage to not only expose the wrongdoing, but ignite a movement within their community, a resistance against exploitation masked as innovation. "We need to act quickly," she said, feeling a surge of leadership prowess. "Let's create a plan to blend in. We need to look and act like we belong there while ensuring we capture everything." The countdown to the event was on, and with each passing moment, the thread weaving their stories together became tighter. Sarah began speaking more confidently, brainstorming ideas and delegating responsibilities with an authoritative air that had previously felt foreign to her. This was no longer practice, it was real, and she was solidifying her identity as a leader. In the following days, they prepared together. They practiced their roles, ensuring every member would execute the plan seamlessly, relying on one another's strengths. Sarah's chest swelled with pride. They were ready to face the giants. However, as the date loomed closer, anxiety curled in the pit of her stomach. What if things went awry? Her worries morphed into tangible questions begging exploration and confrontation. Could she protect her team if things escalated? Then, amidst her growing unease, she recalled why she had begun this journey: to uncover the truth, to assert her place not only against an oppressive system, but to reclaim her own identity. In doing so, she was also transforming others. She had grown from the girl who delivered packages into someone capable of leading a charge. As the launch day dawned, Sarah donned her outfit, feeling the mix of anticipation and fear trickle deep within her. She breathed deeply. Standing in front of the mirror once more, she gave herself a final nod of affirmation. She was ready. They were ready. Arriving at the venue, the electric atmosphere crackled with a sense of possibility. Flashes from the media cameras punctuated the air, attention focused on the startup's display. All the while, Sarah and her team blended into this chaotic theater like wolves in sheep's clothing. As they moved through the throng, all eyes on the glimmering tech, Sarah felt a profound sense of purpose. This was it, the moment of truth. Before long, they found a dark corner with a perfect line of sight to capture crucial evidence. Just as Ryan prepared to record, something unexpected shifted. Sarah noticed a security team scanning the crowd, suspicious of anonymity. Fear gripped her heart, but she swallowed it down. The moment of impending confrontation arrived. Her team could feel the tension blossom as they grabbed their devices. They leaned into the shadows, their world narrowing to the core of their mission. Suddenly, as they began to collect crucial footage of unethical negotiations unfolding before them, sirens blared in the distance, dichotomous to the murmurs of excitement around them. Sirens grew louder, and an agent in a dark suit appeared, eyes fixed sharply on Sarah. Panic flared up within her, time to flee or fight. But beneath it all, a clarity crystallized. She was no longer afraid. Stay with me, she urged her team. It wasn't just about survival. It was about claiming their narrative. As they moved in sync, Sarah seized the moment and pulled her team into action, transforming their fear into resolve. With gritted teeth, they pushed through the crowd's chaos, driven by the very truth they sought to expose. In that bold rush, Sarah felt a fire ignite within, not just for the mission, but for the newfound strength, autonomy, and confidence she had forged along this rugged path. With every beat of her heart, she became less the mere observer, and more the architect of her fate. As they darted through the escape route, the knowledge they sought within their grasp, anxiety yielded to exhilaration. They were united, and together, they had transformed from fearful individuals into empowered change-makers, ready to expose the truth, not just for themselves but for their community at large. This was more than a moment of action. It was a pivotal shift in their identities. Collectively, they faced the storm ahead with the conviction that they could demolish the barriers, silencing countless voices, including their own. The aftermath of the launch would be unpredictable, but for the first time, Sarah was certain of two things. She had crafted a path toward a brighter future, and in doing so, she had claimed her rightful place in the world. As they hurried from the venue, adrenaline coursing through their veins, Sarah felt a wave of exhilaration wash over her. They had begun to shift the narrative. They were not just a small group of individuals, but a thunderous collective, ready to unveil the truth. This was her achievement. Not just the moment poised at the edge of victory, but the transformation that had led her here. The fear that once bound her was now a source of power, propelling her towards a future she had only dared to dream. And as Sarah looked at her teammates, the shared determination in their gazes confirmed it. They were ready to conquer whatever lay ahead. They had fostered resilience and risen above every doubt to grasp the reality of their own potential. Today marked the beginning of a story worth telling. A story echoing with strength, solidarity, and a newfound belief in the unstoppable force they had become. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire you. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm so more people can witness these powerful transformations. Comment your thoughts and theories about Sarah's journey, because your voice matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and experience their own inspiration.